In this video, I'll be explaining why the chaos engine is chaotic. Hi, my name is Eduardo Hernandez. I am the creator of the theory of emergent chemical evolution, the newest theory on the origin of life. I'm also the author of the book of the same title. The reason why I believe I cracked the problem of the origin of life is part of the reason is that I read the chaos book on new science on chaos theory. I also watched hundreds and hundreds of hours of videos on the subject since I think 1986 was the first time I was exposed to chaos theory. The possibility of taking simple equations and being able to create complex, beautiful images and systems that were demonstrated by chaos theory was enthralling to me. Where you could take a simple equation, repeat it over and over and over again, by computer of course, and plot out the results, and you would get natural looking things. One equation gave the branch of a fern, beautifully detailed. Another equation would plot out what looked like a mountain range with evergreen ferns on it. Another one that really impacted me was a modeling system that was based on the information of the environment on Jupiter, and they were able to run it, and here, lo and behold, they would get the image of the red dot. The red dot is a chaotic system found in nature that is a system that's self-sustaining, and one would think unpredictable. But that's the thing that chaos theorists have found, is that you get simple systems and you can get out of them a complex behavior. And in complex systems, things will converge and you'll get simple behaviors. So, for example, predicting when a leaky faucet is going to drop, a single drop. You would think that's something that would be very easy to predict. But as they did the math and of course experimentation and observation, it would become increasingly difficult to predict when the next drop was going to come. And that's because every time a new drop would form, you couldn't predict how much water was left from the previous drop or how much the next drop was going to require to break free from surface tension. So that's a very simple system, a dripping faucet, but it creates complex behavior. If you would plot out the pattern of the drops, it would be all over the place. I mean, eventually it would converge if you plot it large enough into a system that you could follow somewhat. But it would create what they call an attractor. It would be a set of behaviors that can be identified, not exactly predicted, but you would get something you can recognize, like the Mandelbrot plot. It's a simple equation. That equation is just taking a number, multiplying by itself, and adding the original number. It's a simple process, but if you run it through iterations of thousands of times and plot the results of each time you run it, you would get this amazing, beautiful pattern that is repeatable. And if you zoom in, you'll see the same pattern. You zoom out, you'll see the same pattern. So no matter how fine of details you went into that Mandelbrot plot, you'll get the same pattern you can recognize. And that's one of the main things of chaos theory, is the unpredictability of the results based on your starting parameters. So like predicting the weather. Now, based on, meteorologists have equations that allows them to predict when rain's going to come, what patterns of wind, basically how the conditions of the environment are going to be if they have the initial parameters like wind temperature, wind velocity, wind direction, those things. If you put it into an equation that they constructed, you're able to predict the weather for tomorrow, for 2 days, 3 days, very reasonably up to 5 days. But after that, since the details of the parameters they start with are not that fine grained, they're unable to predict further, because what starts happening is you don't have errors start being introduced into the equation based on the fact that we're unable to measure the parameters of every single atom, molecule in the atmosphere in order to directly follow the outcomes. So what happens is the butterfly effect, where you get an error every time, so that when you try to run a model, one small error could eventually lead to you unable to, the error in the flap, meaning that the error introduced by the flapping of a butterfly could eventually lead to you not being able to detect a hurricane, because that small error can be multiplied every time you run the equations to predict the future events, because you run it for today to predict for tomorrow, but the errors in the results for tomorrow will be multiplied once you run it again, and so forth. And just, that's why they call it the butterfly effect. If a small error like the flapping of the wings of a butterfly is multiplied, it can lead to you being unable to predict a hurricane. So, that's the butterfly effect. It's one of the surprising results of chaos research. It was very famous. They made a movie about it, all that stuff. But they basically, the popular understanding of the butterfly effect is not what they're speaking of, or what I just explained. Well, back to the purpose of the video. One of the key components of chaos theory is being able to use computers to rerun these equations over and over again, quickly, of course. But not only that, to maintain the information and to be able to plot out all the points generated by the system. Excuse me, I need to edit that out. So the main function of computers is the ability to repeatedly run these equations over and over again, a loop back loop. And that's necessary for these complex behaviors and results to come about. Now, in nature, we see it in the clouds in Jupiter. We see, again, the swinging of the pendulum. The ability to predict such a simple system over time becomes unpredictable. So, but it's a repeating system. So the same thing with the chaos engine that I explain in my theory. You have the oceanic currents taking the contents of the ocean through the pH gradients over and over again. Close to the surface of the ocean, they're repeating currents, cycles that occur all the time. And we see the results of that at the edge, at the beaches, as waves. When those currents that are circular and only work at the surface start spinning and start taking the contents of the surface up and down, closer to the surface, deeper, away, up and down. I believe it's currently up to 400, 500 feet. That kind of current occurs at the surface of the oceans. Once it keeps going and once it reaches the edge of the plates, then it starts arcing and crashing as waves. So this is constantly happening at the surface of the oceans. It's been happening since the beginning of quote unquote time, the beginning of the oceans. But that is a repeating system that would have chaotic results. Because what would happen back in the primordial time is you have the constituent atoms of the system would be, in this case, amino acids. Now, these amino acids would be transported through these pH gradients, and every time it's transported, depending on what that amino acid is and at what pH it activates its polar regions, its bonding ends, would determine what type of other amino acids get attached at that point. And then henceforth you'll get a new polypeptide, and it will go through the cycle again. Now this cycle will repeat ad infinitum for billions of years, millions of years, and then eventually over billions of years. But it only took a couple of million years until life emerged from those cycles. A simple system that had complex results. Like in chaos theory, they speak of a simple system creating extremely complex patterns is snowflakes. You have simple molecules, water molecules, one oxygen atom with two hydrogen atoms. It's polar, and you have the simple system of it passing through different temperature gradients, circulating in the atmosphere, and you would have other water molecules attach. Now, the attaching is a simple system. The negative side of one water molecule will be attracted to the positive side of another water molecule, and so forth. That will continue to happen. Now, what happens is the end results is we get a snowflake, a beautiful crystalline structure. But what we see in nature is that we're unable to predict, or we never see the same pattern between one snowflake and another. It's a total chaotic system. It allows these simple molecules to go through a simple process of cooling and addition of water molecules to form one of the most complex structures seen in nature, a simple water molecule. So chaotic systems are everywhere in nature. I'm unable to imagine the system of repeating cycles in the oceans not behaving in a chaotic behavior, allowing that system to create very complex polyamino acids, especially when they're laden with amino acids because of the source of meteorites. So that to me screams of a chaotic system, a simple system of water taking amino acids through pH gradients, which is what amino acids need to activate their bonds. Different amino acids need to be at a different pH in order for them to activate and bond with other amino acids. How would that happen in a simple pond or pool? It wouldn't, because there wouldn't be enough space from the surface to deeper in for the atmospheric carbon dioxide to create pH gradient in that water. So the pH of that water would be only suitable for one type of amino acid to activate, which would not be conducive to creating more complex polyamino peptides. It also would not be very conducive to creating any kind of cyclic behavior that would allow complex inorganic molecules to interact and form form more complex molecules that would eventually lead to life. The fact that life today uses amino acids for all metabolic processes, all metabolic source of, all metabolic reactions in life begin with amino acids, which are then converted into another molecule by amino acids. Why, if life started with inorganic material, would that system not continue? Again, a system that depends on the presence of water at all times. So this theory of evaporating and refilling pools of water, I think is untenable. I think it's a system that would not have readily sustained any cyclic system that would eventually lead to life. Life is a cyclic process. It's a process that does not occur in a vacuum. It's a process that requires the environment of that life form to be conducive to its continued existence. So to look for molecules that would react and continue to exist without a conducive environment and eventually lead to life, I believe, is untenable. The fact that the chaotic system of the relentless repeating cycles in my theory is also mimicked within cells, within life, where you have multiple cyclic systems always working. So the chaotic system generated by the quote-unquote chaos engine of the repeating relentless cycles found at the beginning, at the origin of life, is conducive and chaotic enough to have easily led to molecular components being created that would find themselves in a conducive environment, a water environment, with changing pH levels, allowing systems to emerge, more complex systems to emerge, where only certain things would occur at a certain pH, and then cycle back in the cycle and continue to get more and more complex products out of that system, which would, a simple system, according to chaos theory, would lead to complex behavior, like the generation of the components of life. And life would itself, a complex system, would create cycles that allow it to produce much simpler behavior, which is replication. I don't like to say self-replicating. It's not. It is the replication of the initial RNA molecules occurred in this chaotic engine and allowed more complex RNA molecules to be constructed as the cycle continued. And that will be the subject for another video, because I need to limit these videos down so that people will watch them. But not only that, it's a complex, very complex process, the origin of life. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. That's why they were looking for a simple solution that wasn't there. The complex, I mean, the simple environmental conditions that were in place led to complex, chaotic behavior and results, which eventually resulted in the emergence of life. So I hope I was able to convince you why the chaos engine is chaotic. If you like to get further information from me on, if you have any particular questions about chaos and how it applies to life, or any particular things I did not address, please put in the comments below, and I'll make another video and address those actual questions you may have. This is a subject I'm very passionate about. I've worked on since I was 17 years old, and it's been 16 years that I've worked on this problem day in and day out for 14 years before I solved it. And now it's been a couple more years since I came up with the solution and published the book. And then now trying to get the word out. Please subscribe, give me a like, and don't forget to tell your friends. Thank you.